Suchanda will...
Sue's driving back from Maidstone, so
Okay.
she hoped to be here on time, but obviously traffic may have prevented
Right.
that.
Well, the first thing is Chair's introduction, and as ever I haven't thought about what to say, and we'll probably come to it anyway. So I haven't really anything to say. The Chair had nothing to say.
She's all set out.
To say by way of introduction. I did attach the minutes of the past meeting. Has anybody got any comments?
I didn't have any comments. I wasn't there, so
Right.
But
Is everybody happy to accept the minutes? Okay. Christina, can you hear me all right? I mean, do you think that's... I'll speak up, if we could all speak up. I don't know what the acoustics are like in here.
who knows?
Minutes of the June meeting were accepted. Matters arising, I don't think there are any that are not on the...
Not covered.
They're not covered.
Not covered on the agenda. None other than on the agenda. Okay.
We're moving at pace.
Yes, we're going to try and get this done quickly. Action points since the last meeting. Well, the first one I think is a success, which we could record as a success.
Yeah.
And that is the removal of the rail over the bollards at the top of Milk Alley.
I think the only delay to that whole project was someone breaking the water main so that they couldn't be painted.
Well, no, they weren't. To be frank, Dan, those somehow or other those three bollards were forgotten because the leak didn't happen until after about 3 weeks after the previous the four were done. But it's looking brilliant. What do you think about it, Chris? I mean, I've noticed lots of people saying how much easier life is.
They were painting the last bollard this morning. On the other end of the
Yeah.
sort of the
Okay. Yes.
Yes, they were, because there are three there, aren't
There
there?
are.
And they were painting those.
That's brilliant. I think, and it's been, I mean, nobody's said anything to me about, well, perhaps I shouldn't mention it, about costs or covering, you know, I think it's all been done. And that I do have one comment to make about Seven Post and Milk Alley, and that is cyclists. Because, as I understand it, the rail was originally put up to stop cyclists. And I have now noticed, I have to say, because I use that pathway into town at least twice a day, that cyclists are beginning to use it. So when we talked at the town team this morning about stopping cyclists on the town wall, it does seem to me that there is a strong argument in favour of putting up no cycling signs, not just on the lampposts that are there, and I think there are two, but also on the ground.
They have to go on the floor for cyclists, but I can't remember whether Milk Alley was on the list. St Peter's, you see, the path through St Peter's was because they have problems with cyclists, as it is through St Clement's, because they also have problems with cyclists. But Milk Alley, I don't think that was on it, because it was already a no cycle area.
Yeah, the bar made it. No cycling, you know, it was.
So what we need now is a sign on the floor if they're going to look at the, don't know how we get that now. Because that must be...
I'll have a conversation.
So who's responsible? It's DDC, is it?
This is where we get that whole area is an absolute nightmare for responsibility. It's probably proud. It's probably public right of way, KCC.
Well, hang on, I'm just trying to get back into that.
We're not got a template for those something. We could.
The rest of that 100 million.
Yeah.
It depends on the classification of it.
It definitely
It
is
could-
no cycle. There is no cycling up
I don't think
there. You don't think
I
it
don't
is?
think it is. It depends on how historic the alleyway is. It might be considered ancient highway,
Right.
which then
And
means
how
that
does that impact on?
means cycling has to be allowed.
It has to be allowed.
Yeah. This
But
is-
cycles were only invented in the late 19th century.
Yeah.
So if it's an ancient highway,
Oh yeah.
they didn't have bikes.
The word ancient highway does it's just the classification they use for inherited, rights of way, but that's one to look into further. But
So who is going to take responsibility?
I'll make some phone calls, yeah, that's fine.
But
Yeah.
there is now a potential problem, I'm going to say, because I don't think it's yet been. Because every time I see a cyclist, I tell them it's not an appropriate place to.
The difficulty we might have is that highways' concerns around removing the bars would be that it would make it a bigger danger to existing road and walkway users. So if
So we
we've
should admit
convinced
that
we've
there's a problem.
convinced them that removing the bar is a good idea to aid accessibility, and for us to then go back and say, actually, we think your original objections are justified, they may well turn around and say, we'll put the bar back in there.
Oh no,
So I would suggest maybe
we don't
we keep a
say.
watching brief on.
Yes. So I
But
would
that
say
may
there is
come
now
to,
a potential
delete.
problem with cyclists over which we should keep a watching brief.
Is there no way that we can look up the status of El Cali to decide sort of whose responsibility it is and what it is? What?
There's so many delegations around bits of land like that, although it could be owned by KCC, it could be part of the legislation that was delegated to the district council to discharge, and vice versa. It could have been borough land that was transferred to the district authority, but the remit actually comes under KCC's authority to discharge.
Yeah. I know when we asked about Milk Alley,
Yeah.
when we were Chris was first doing up Milk Alley,
Yeah.
we had to get permission from DDC to do that.
Yeah.
And the wall by St Peter's Church was a DDC issue
Yeah.
because we had got a suggestion that maybe we could use sort of a coverway, not
Yeah.
permanent, but with flowers that went up through that alleyway. And we were told we'd have to ask DDC for permission. Now, whether that's because we're not actually on the ground,
Yeah.
we're joining two adjoining pieces of land, I don't know.
But it's,
Okay, can I just? I don't think we need to go.
No,
into
I'm
that.
just asking.
Yeah, but
where.
what we're deciding is, are we positively not to make inquiries at this stage?
Well,
not official inquiries.
No. Okay. Well, I won't record any
Yeah.
official
Yeah.
inquiries. So we can move on, I think, to 4B,
Yeah.
which is a route from the Key car park into town via Ainsley Court. And we've had a letter which I attached, and I haven't got it in front of me at the moment, from the directors of Ainsley Court, who are basically agreeing in principle. We now have two decisions to make. One is to get an estimate for the cost of building that ramp. which they've agreed to, and secondly, the route across Strand Street, because we talked about that when we met with them, about the possibility. Oh, here's Sue. Hello. Just arrived just
Traffic
in
was
time.
Sorry, I was doing alright until I got to the traffic lights in the end.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm
Okay.
late.
We're just talking about the Ainsley Court
Yep.
situation, and I'm saying there are two decisions that we need to make now, because basically we've got agreement from the Ainsley Court people in principle that this ramp can be built. So we need to consider getting an estimate for the cost and how we go about that. And secondly, we need to talk about the issue which actually you began to talk about at that meeting that we had, Sue, on site, which was about getting across Strand Street with, which would involve the removal of one parking place, we thought, but the re-establishment of residence parking in the current parking slots that are used by doctors. Is that right?
Yeah.
So, shall we talk about that first and then come on to the question of the budget?
Okay. So the reallocation of the parking slots
Yes.
can be explored once the doctors have formally ceased their use of the facilities in the butchery.
Yes.
So technically they're still running a few clinics and things there. So
How do we find out that?
It's just asking the doctors.
Right.
We're talking,
Right to
we'll be
practice
clear, we're
manager.
talking about the two parking spaces that are actually at Breezy Corner.
Yes,
Yes.
Right, so those two would,
No, they're not Breezy Corner, are they?
yeah,
they are.
they're nowhere near Strand Street. Well,
No, they're not. But what they do is if you remove one from Strand Street, you're then backfilling with a couple of spaces
that's what I
elsewhere.
thought you were coming to,
Oh,
yes. So you're removing the two in Breezy Corner,
Which are for the doctors, it says.
Yeah.
but I think the doctors are going to continue at the butchery until
Of course.
the new
Yes,
centre is
yes.
complete.
That's right.
So we need to know where that is. Really.
Yes.
Exactly. And
So-
it's only they that can tell us that. So.
Okay, so shall I write to the practice manager
Yeah.
and ask for, unless anybody here knows of
No.
what they're...
Whether they have a completion date.
Will there be no
About when they will be leaving the butchery premises.
Or no longer using it.
No, we would. And therefore not to these parking spaces. And then, if we can satisfy, which we should be able to do, shouldn't we, satisfy the local residents that actually they're not losing a parking space.
So the next stage of the process will be to ask Dover District Council if to facilitate that crossing, they would be prepared to amend the parking scheme for Sandwich to remove that one parking space.
On the corner of Strand Street and Love Lane.
Yeah.
Yes. Then BBC should be asked to remove parking space.
To amend their parking scheme to remove it, yeah, because there's a process that they have to go through.
Okay, so that avoids all the trouble that we thought we might have about getting a cushion and all the rest of
It's hopefully a more straightforward
Yes,
solution.
yes. Okay,
So sorry, can we be clear, when you're coming to Strand Street then, through Ainsley Court, you're crossing the road there in onto a drop curb pavement?
No, you're,
No,
You're
you're going to
going
go,
to-
you're crossing straight into Love Lane.
yes.
Yeah.
Right. So it removes the reason to have a pathway shown that this is a crossing.
Well, I mean, that would be terribly useful, wouldn't it?
But I don't think we can we? Because the crossings, any crossing there has to be.
It will be
It's
too close.
isn't
It
it?
will be too close to the junction at the end of Strand
The
Street.
pavement's not wide enough to satisfy
Yeah.
Yeah.
balancing.
So I think we'll have to go as far as we can to facilitate, but there'll be things that we can't do simply because of how narrow the streets are in Sandwich.
And there isn't an option, you know, the crossing we talked about, or the crossing on the ground that we talked about at the end of the bridge, which indicates that there are pedestrians.
Oh, the marking on the roads.
Yeah.
Yes, we're coming to those.
Would,
I think.
would that not even be possible?
Maybe, but we carry on.
Yes.
If you want to get to that.
Yes, but the second issue is about getting estimates to build the ramp in Ainsley Court. So how do we go about that?
Does it have to be through the,
It'd have to be through full council, yeah.
Okay, so
through Sandwich, Dover and
Sandwich.
just Sandwich Town Council?
because there is a budget of
Yeah.
£2,500 and that might be enough, who knows, to cover that. I've no idea what the cost of this.
So who gets a quote? See,
Sandwich Town Council, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
It probably ends up being Gibson's.
always seems to. Because I
Yeah,
would
Jacob's got
expect
skills.
at least 3 quotes.
Particular skills needed on most.
So CU to into STC, a request for a tender to go out to build a ramp through Ainsley Court. Okay, that's that item. Okay. 4C, special marking to indicate the dropped curb from Market Street to Mill Valley. Anything further to report? And that's for you, Sue. I don't know if you...
Oh no, sorry, I haven't had anything further on
Okay.
that, and I must admit through August I haven't chased it up by now,
Yes.
but I will do.
Chris, I was going to ask you, do you think this is a high priority? Because it seems to me that, I mean, from observation, I don't often see, in fact, I don't think I ever see cars parked across that dropped curb.
I think they park there all the time, don't they?
Do they?
Well, it depends what drop curb we're talking about. There's the drop curb that is adjacent to parking spaces, or there's the drop curb which is on,
No,
can't think of
it's-
the name of the alleyway,
Yes.
near the parking meter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because the dropped curb that is close to parking spaces,
Yeah.
we know cars park there
Yeah,
because there are
It's a parking
lots.
space, yeah.
But DDC or Sue reported back to us that actually there's another dropped curb,
Yeah.
which is, yes, and that's what we're worried about, is that cars do park across there, but
Very-
I've never seen.
Very rarely.
They
They
would
stop there occasionally to let
Yeah.
traffic pass, but
They would only be able to stop there if they have a blue badge,
Mm.
which technically they would be allowed to do. But I must admit, I haven't seen it
No.
very often. The outstanding item was some way of indicating when you got to the end of Milk Alley that there was
Well,
a drop curb to the left,
Yeah.
and
Indicating
that's
to
what I
people.
haven't really had a.
Yes, that would be a good idea.
So I haven't really had a response on that.
Yes, because, I mean, I'm quite keen on dropping things off the agenda if we think either it's not terribly important or it's head against brick wall.
I'll ask once again, and so probably the best thing is to not renew it on the agenda, but the next time it will come up as matters arising if I've managed to get a
Okay,
response.
so I'll say, so Councillor Chandler will inquire about signage
think I talked to them about some kind of marking on the pavement rather than
Yeah.
putting a post and a
To
sign.
point out a dropped curb. I have to say, I spelled curb K-E-R-B. I've noticed that some people spell it C-U-R-B. And I've been watching something with subtitles, presumably done in America, where they say C-U-R-B. So I think, oh gosh, I've had it wrong all this time. I think,
Highways will always spell it K-E-R-B.
yes, that's how I spell it. But anyway, point out, dropped curb at the pathway through St. Peter's. That's what it is. Through St. Peter's into King Street. Right. 4D. 4D is really, I think we've slightly abandoned the question of the dropped curb between Boots and Billards, but the uneven pavements. A friend actually was taken to hospital having tripped on that uneven pavement. And at the same time I heard about somebody else who had a problem there. So is there anything that can be done?
Well, they can be reported as an uneven pavement, yeah. And I thought I had done, but maybe I'd have to follow it up. So we can report it as uneven pavements. That's not a problem through the normal KCC reporting function. The difficulty of, as always, with sandwich pavements is that they're that very nice York stone, which is quite difficult to set absolutely level. So I'll report it, and then I'll have a conversation with the highways to see whether they think they can improve on the current.
It's not just unevenness, is it? Because you've got some pavements which actually sort of come up.
Yeah, I mean, and that trouble is that's the nature of the.
Yeah, but that's the bit that's really dangerous because people should.
Yeah. So I mean, to a certain extent, sometimes with the York stone pavements, unless you're going to sort of lift the whole lot up and start again, which is very expensive, or you're going to lift the whole lot up and pave it, tarmac it, which is not really what we want to see in Sandwich. It's quite tricky to actually achieve a flat surface.
But actually, where they prepared the water at the Upper Strand Street end of Southern Coast Alley, they've done an excellent job. It's really very smooth.
Good.
So
I'll report it and we'll see what we can do.
Yes, okay. And that's report to DDC.
No, to KCC Highways.
Then
Sorry, can I just go back then? Because we
Yes.
still haven't. Are we going to ask if we shall have this markings on the road from
That's
Ainsley
for
Court to
no.
from Ainsley Court to where the drop curb is there to Milk Alley? Just something that indicates that you might have pedestrians walking across.
Sorry, where are you going from? From Ainsley
Well,
Court?
you're crossing,
Love
it's
Lane.
the Strand Street problem, it's from Ainsley Court to Love Lane. So where you've got those lines, hatchback lines at the end of the toll bridge, which we've asked if they can be refreshed, if that was at least being put there, it's not an official zebra crossing, but it is warning motorists that you could have pedestrians crossing, and therefore you would have people in wheelchairs and others. It kind of would help an awful lot of people that was an official crossing going across there. Well, I say an official crossing. It's warning people that pedestrians might be in the road.
All right. So let me ask whether there's anything appropriate that can be used, given that you can't, it's too narrow to
Yes.
put in an official crossing. I don't know.
I think when we looked at this before, it will require a TRO.
It will, yes, it will require a TRO.
what is a TRO?
Traffic regulation. And that will, the route route for that would have to be through the highways improvement plan for Sandwich probably.
Could there not be a sign, you know the signs of an old person on a stick, which I always feel, not sure about that. I mean, is not that the sort of thing that, on a lamppost, that would...
Yes,
I personally, I don't.
You don't
I
take any
think
notice
so.
of it?
I think
You could put
being
it
an old
everywhere.
person on a stick. No, I just think that you can't. We know you can't have an official zebra crossing there. You can't have anything official. But there is nowhere in Strand Street that you can actually cross safely anywhere, regardless of whether you are disabled or you've got a buggy or you just want to cross the road. But the little hatch is on the road across from the toll bridge, which we asked for. They are there, and we asked them to be refreshed, so that people, when the traffic changed, people knew that actually pedestrian had right of way.
let me,
It's that. If that was on that road,
By the little hatchings, you mean those
Of course,
white
they-
things
they-
by zebra
no,
crossing?
they just had. Do you remember
is
there
it
were?
a grid?
There was a grid painted onto the road.
I'll ask, is the
Mhm.
answer.
So hang on, so I'm just thinking of
I think it was it's in
a
yellow.
false
isn't it?
Yeah,
nose.
Yeah.
Cross hatching.
Cross hatching, yes, that's the word.
So SC to ask who?
Kent Highways.
Kent Highways.
We have got a new highways officer.
We-
now, this area.
I mean, we're some way down the road at this stage.
Takes
You
a
know,
long
there's
time.
quite a long time. So rehatching across Strand Street. And what would that would indicate pedestrian?
Pedestrian, doesn't it indicate pedestrian priority?
Yes, I mean, what's interesting, of course, is that pedestrians now have priority at junctions anyway.
Yeah, but most drivers don't know that.
I know, but you know,
It's not a junction. Is it?
technically it's not a junction, no. But but you know, if they're going at 20 miles an hour, they should be able
If
to.
they don't want,
Okay.
Anyway, I will ask.
because
Right.
if it goes on the hit report, well, we might go there. Do number 53, 53 years time, we might have got there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
4E is the signage besides the almshouses onto the bus, which
Yeah,
they can
so
see
I haven't actually, that one is going to be a lot more complex because
Yeah.
it's about it's about completely redesigning the parking area. So I imagine that one's taking a little bit of thought. It's bollards and the parking area. So I have asked that question and I'll go back on it. But
Would it be outside the realms of possibilities to then just extend the drop curb to marry up with the keep clear notice on the road?
okay, I didn't actually ask that question because
I was just thinking,
Yeah,
I
okay.
went past that the other day and thought, you just drop the curb and put another removable bollard in there.
Okay.
It would serve the same purpose.
all right.
And it wouldn't affect the parking at all.
it's not York Stone, is it? It's
No,
just
no,
tarmac
it's
there.
tarmac that one.
Yes.
All right, let me ask that question,
So
which is slightly different to the one I asked
SC
before.
will ask about extending the drop curb.
Yeah, I mean, the parking area is DDC. I'll have to. I'm not entirely sure where the responsibility for the drop curb goes, but I'll find out because it's Yeah. potentially highway.
So the dropped curb would be extended.
To basically in line with the painted keep clear sign.
Extending the drop curb to put it in line with the painted keep clear sign. Yes, that seems.
There's a whole collaboration of people that are involved in that one.
Anyway, just. Right. Road marking between the Barbican and the toll bridge that indicates pedestrians have priority. That's what
That's
we've
what we
got.
were talking about.
And it's been done?
No,
No, it's there, but it needs renewing, is what you're saying.
yes, you
Yes.
can't see it.
We were waiting for the WNO lines to be done and they were going to
They were going
utilise
to
the
utilise
same
the same vehicle to do it, and we're nearly there, but not quite.
vehicle. Yeah.
So when are the double yellow lines going to be done.
No, this is under the HIP report
Yes.
from the traffic
Yeah.
survey.
But we're nearly there
Yeah.
because they're at the point of actually doing it rather
Yeah.
than so.
Right, okay.
So
they
you're
will
going
do
to
it.
chase that up, Sue?
Yeah, I'll remind them that they need to do that at the same time.
And while they're at it, they could do that. That's worn out too, isn't it?
Which one?
Straight street.
Oh, okay.
Okay, hang on. Road on
Different
should
colour
be
then.
renewed when the double yellows
Well, it
are
would be
put in.
sensible for it to be done. I'll have to
Oh.
make that request. So.
SC will request from KCC,
Yeah, I'll go through. It'll be Stephanie Williams. Yeah.
KCC Highway. Right. Oh, now this is something that I haven't. Oh no, wait a minute. 5. Concern about the tables and chairs outside the waiting room blocking the existing block curb. And we've had 2 pieces of correspondence which I sent you. One from Carol
Yeah.
and one from
I
Councillor
think-
Carter.
I think they've actually, whoever came down, and I have this from the owner of Oz's, whoever came down to talk to him about the fact that he hadn't got a permit, a licensing permit to put his 2 tables and chairs outside, even though they've been there for donkey's years. He now has a permit up, an application in the window. Anyone who wishes to object to it can do. But at the same time, I understand they had a look at what was going on with the rails, and they made
Those are the big blue
Yeah,
advertising.
they made them and I think dictated where the rail should be. If you face it on the right hand side, it was originally put there because it was to stop people moving the chairs further across, but there was some discrepancy about how far that went. So they've now asked them they've told them where to put it on the right hand side, and also the second one on that side has to be at an angle going in towards their building. So if you look at it, you've got one straight one at the dictated pace where presumably they have permission to be, and then the next one does that. So effectively, it
Can I
means
just ask Carol, by the right hand side you mean the passageway which contains a phone box?
yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So that is there now, and it's there. So effectively, if you want to go to the phone box, you can. I mean, I know it doesn't work, but apparently lots of visitors take pictures of themselves inside it. So you can access the phone box. I think the issue now is whether or not the gap between the phone box and the 2 tables and chairs and Ozzy's waste rubbish bin is going to be enough for a wheelchair to come through. So you really need to check that out, because effectively on the other side, so we go to the facing it to the left hand side, the bollards, I don't know what you call these things, they have been moved. So instead of being at the side of the tables and chairs there, one's being moved to the front, so across their area at the front, and one to the back of the building. So you can now come up the drop curb at the back of the building, along the back behind the waiting room, and as long as you can access coming down here, you do have a right of way. Now the biggest problem I see there is that you still will have an issue with respect to people who've tied their bicycles up to that bollard, because that's what people were doing.
When you say bollard, you mean one of those blue signs?
No, there's a black,
lamp.
it's not a lamp case, it's not very high. It's one of the black bollards, no, and both the bikes were tied there. So it's whether or not that needs to be enforced, and they can't do that. Because if they do, you can't get through the back. And my other query might be, is there any way, if you can't get through, that Ozzy's actual rubbish, I think he's only got one, hasn't he? I think there's only one. Whether Ozzy's one could be on the other side.
Keep all the bins together.
And keep the bins together so that it actually, because the tables and chairs, he's only allowed one table, two tables, but with two chairs. So effectively it's a narrow strip. If the bin was moved, it would be wider. And I'm not saying you have to, you need to test it out. I just sort of had a good walk round and look round, and I talked to the guy in Ozzy's, who I do feel particularly sorry for because he's done that for years and without.
Have you been down there recently?
I haven't been for the past few weeks.
No, we might go there after this meeting, take a look and see what.
Yeah,
It's
that would be my only
Yes.
suggestion. But if you can get through without any disruption, then I think it's as good as it's going to get.
Yes.
Because you'll then come round to Carpenter's, where there is a drop curb, and when the Guildhall forecourt's finished, you're going to have one on the other side, so you can go from there across to the Guildhall forecourt.
The bikes being locked there don't seem to be a huge problem. There's a certain couple of people in town who are intentionally locking their bikes to it and then taking pictures to prove there's a obstruction.
All right.
So,
I don't know. I mean, these two were these were definitely visitors. They were in their shorts and they'd had a drink and just got their bikes back.
There is a problem now about bikes, isn't there? Particularly because they're so valuable. People want to keep an eye on them. And and given that end of town is becoming so busy, and that's good, but cyclists want to know what's happening with their bikes, and that's another issue. I mean, it's obviously not within the remit of this committee, but it would be helpful, and I think when it comes to the Heritage and Townscape Committee, the Town Council, one of the things we have to look at is bike racks, and making the town more cycle friendly perhaps, and getting bikes visible where people can't be. But that is another issue. I mean, it is possible, isn't it, to think about bike racks being located at that garage. Isn't that owned by the same people who own the waiting room across the road? Because they did say they would replace the bike racks.
yeah, they have, yeah.
And where have they put them?
There's some
Oh,
bike racks on the corner of Moatsole, they've been extended.
And they're waiting, they've ordered new bike racks because the newer ones take up far less space.
Right.
So they've ordered some new ones, and I understand some of those are going down on the quay. And then it will be a case of seeing whether there's a suitable size to be able to put them.
Yeah.
Can I just ask something else though? Because, and I don't have an answer to this, but at the left-hand side of the waiting room, you have got again yellow cross-hatching on the road. Now I was assuming was to make sure that drivers who wanted to come round didn't swing too close to the pavement. But if you had bike racks there, effectively they would be close to the waiting room, they'd be in it, and drivers would have to go around it because effectively at the moment they cut that corner.
Yeah, so I asked this question before, Steve, and it's possible, but it would require a physical window.
So you'd have to, you couldn't leave it. So yeah, I understand that. You couldn't leave it as just the yellow hatching and put the bike racks on it. You'd have to build it out as a proper curve and then put the bike racks on it.
But we're doing the roads in.
Not that particular bit, unfortunately.
It won't. You couldn't just add it on, unfortunately.
You'd have to. I mean, it would have to be a redesign, and they'd have to do the. Can't remember what
Sweep.
the
Sweep
sweep, but
analysis.
basically the technical
Technical
calculations
drawing,
around the sweep to make sure how far it could go out as to what vehicles could get round it, make sure delivery vehicles could get round and that kind of
I'm
thing.
sure it was designed probably that it can't be built out physically.
And
because
then
of the-
and then if it was physically possible, unfortunately you have to do again a TRO and a design, and it has to be built out. So in the short term, probably it's better to find other sites to put the bike racks. In the longer term, then the town council might think it's something that they want to do.
some probably for the project board.
I don't think I dreamt it. I think I saw tables and chairs out on that hatching at some point, but they've been.
It was when the festival was.
Yeah, when the roads closed and you know, so the whole of Delve Street was closed, then there are, but not otherwise. And I did notice the other day that the waiting room have actually bolted their tables down to
They've
the ground,
bolted
so
them,
they
so
can't be moved.
Yeah,
But it doesn't stop people now. It doesn't stop people moving their chairs out there. So even if they haven't got a table, when it was really busy, people had just taken some chairs and.
That's the responsibility of the business.
Yeah.
Really, so.
Even though the tables have been bolted down, you still get complaints that the tables have been moved away from where the plans are at.
And it's not the same.
Okay. Item 6 is, and I'm afraid this is my fault, shrub blocking dropped curb by Sandwich Medical Practice. Somebody who has recently started to use a mobility scooter got in touch with me about a very large shrub which is currently blocking the only dropped curb which is now available because of what's going on with the practice extension. And I haven't looked at it very recently, and I just thought, oh, I'll go along there with a pair of shears, but I didn't. I mean, I don't know who is responsible for that.
Yeah.
It's at the far end of the medical centre.
Yeah.
There's a dropped curb there.
Yeah.
Have you tried getting into the medical centre recently, Chris, since they've started?
Yeah, it was about 2 weeks ago. Don't remember seeing that much overgrown and stuff.
Okay.
Take shears down.
Yeah.
But so do you?
Got some in the car for
Oh,
the
yes. Got the
community caretaker ones.
community caretaker ones.
What? Oh, of garden shears, yes. Oh, that would be brilliant.
Chris will be able to buy us a battery operated.
Oh, fantastic.
We'll look at the shrub and fix it. Look at the shrub.
It's easier to seek forgiveness than gain permission.
Are you going?
I've got to go in about 5.
Okay, because we need to fix them.
It's all right.
Yes, Chris, you raised the question of a friend of yours who
Yes.
would be.
Anybody wants any extra people on here or has objections? I've known Albert for 34 years.
He also uses a mobility.
Recently moved into a mobility scooter for his old age.
Albert Tweddle.
Yes.
Yeah. Great.
Okay, what's his name?
Albert Tweddle. TWEWDLE. I can send you his email address if you like.
He's a retired painter and decorator. He's also a retained fireman.
Oh, really?
Further back in
So
years,
Marine.
yeah. I was going to say he's originally used to work with the cadets when they were down
Right.
Key.
Okay, that sounds like a very excellent addition, and thank you for suggesting him. Thank you.
I will work with him.
Okay, any other business?
I've got a request from Kath Gifford. There's a bus stop near the Crescent in Dover Road. The bus stop was originally provided as a Dover Road bus stop, But when they put the bypass in, it must be going back a few years now, the bus stop was moved. As a result of the bus stop being moved, there is no longer a drop curb there. And so, with all the new buildings and all the other things going on, what Kath is saying is it would be good to be encouraging people to use the bus just to come into Sandwich rather than cars. But also, it means that anyone who's not mobile or none with a buggy or whatever, it's difficult to get up the curbs and onto.
I can't place it.
Well, I don't know this area at all, but
I can't picture it.
it's she says it's the bus stop rear of the Crescent, near the Crescent, sorry, and Dover Road.
The Crescent is the houses that are set back.
As I understand it, yes.
Yeah, which is right down the very far end.
Yes.
Past John's Green.
She said there was a bus stop there. They moved that bus stop because the bus is no longer.
Well, maybe we should ask Kath, or you should ask
Yeah,
Kath for a
that's-
photo
Yeah.
and a map.
There's a bus stop near the Crescent that needs a drop curb so people can access the bus.
Well,
Surely there's no buses going down.
well, she says there are buses going down there.
Really?
I don't know where they turn. Or maybe they turn in the Crescent.
New bus, I think.
I've
For your
never
school
known
bus.
of a bus going up Dover Road towards John's Green and then
Right.
turning back.
So I'll ask her what number bus goes up.
I've got a contact at Stagecoach. I'll
Yeah.
call them when I'm on the
Yeah,
school run.
well,
but
I mean, that's
never-
what she's saying, that they're encouraging people to come into the town on the bus from there.
See, sometimes, and sometimes, although there's not a drop curb immediately by the bus stop, there's a good reason for that, because it's not a safe crossing point, if that makes sense, and people are safer crossing a little way up on the pavement to walk down, but I can't picture this one
I
either,
don't
so
know.
I'd have to go and look, but
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'll ask her
Okay,
about the buses.
that would be good. Thank you. So,
I think I was only down there the other day. I must admit, if I'd seen a bus stop down that end, I probably would have noticed it as being quite peculiar. As It's not a bus route.
okay.
so I've said Carol George will ask Kath Gifford to clarify. Okay, date of next meeting. So the main business is to ask the town council to agree to a tender going out.
Yeah.
So that would be the next town council meeting. So we should meet before the October meeting, or do you think?
Yeah, so towards sort of before the October meeting, because
Mid-October.
they might then have managed to have some quotes back, and
I don't know how long that
well, it depends on the
So,
businesses.
well, the tender will be what it will be. The experience of other public realm amendments and tenders will be that we won't get many, if any. We may end up having a choice of one.
Okay, so we're talking about well, the October council meeting is the 31st. So
We fixed a town team meeting for the 17th.
yes, well then we could meet on in the afternoon of the 17th.
Totally, is that? Sorry.
That's
Monday.
Monday.
Okay. I'll confirm with you.
I've actually got a meeting at 4 o'clock in Canterbury that day, but if we can get through the business quickly, we should. Okay, so.
We've done well today.
Yeah. So the date of next meeting is October 17th at 2 o'clock here, if possible.
This point, yeah.
Is that okay? And I'll check with your, is he called Kevin?
Kevin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 o'clock? because it seems comfortable and safe and accessible. Okay,
That's it.
thanks very much.
Well done.